What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses walks into a late-night studio, expecting a conversation and, instead finds herself in a confrontation? This is the story of how Diane Keaton, the Oscar-winning icon of stage and screen, stood her ground against Jimmy Kimmel and walked off that set with more dignity than anyone in the room knew how to handle. It began like any other promotional appearance. Keaton was there to talk about her new film, a thoughtful, introspective piece on aging with grace in a youth-obsessed industry, a subject she knew intimately, having built a legendary career that spanned generations. The audience welcomed her warmly, applause, admiration, affection. She took her seat with that familiar magnetic smile. But Jimmy Kimmel had other plans. So Diane, he began with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. The crowd shifted. Nervous laughter. Awkward silence. This wasn't witty, it was dismissive, and Diane felt it. She kept her poise. We don't see enough of them on screen, or off, especially not told with honesty. More exciting. Her smile faded just slightly. The same character? She repeated. Her voice was calm, but cool. Jimmy, I've played everything from Annie Hall to a mafia wife. Comedy, drama, thriller, romance, you name it. What exactly do you mean by the same character? Jimmy hesitated for a beat, then chose the worst possible route. Oh, come on, Diane. You know what I mean? That quirky, neurotic woman? Still figuring life out. It's kind of your brand. Silence. Even the band behind Jimmy's desk looked uneasy now. Diane leaned forward slightly, her voice firm. Jimmy, I think you're confusing me with the roles I've played, but even if I had played one type my whole career, reducing it all to a stereotype shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what acting actually is. Jimmy rolled his eyes. Literally. Oh boy, here we go. Are we getting an acting lecture now? Because Diane, my audience, didn't show up for a masterclass. The jab was clear, cruel even, designed to make her sound pompous for defending her craft. But Diane Keaton didn't survive Hollywood for 5 decades by being fragile. She didn't blink. You're right, Jimmy, she said calmly. Your audience came to hear an honest conversation, to see someone they admire treated with respect. But what they're getting tonight is cheap shots, disguised as questions. The tension was unbearable now. You could almost hear producers behind the scenes panicking, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let it unravel further. But Kimmel wasn't done. Cheap shots? He repeated, chuckling. I'm just asking what people are thinking. Let's be honest, when was the last time you took a real risk? Did something people didn't expect? That was the moment. You could see it in Diane's eyes. The moment. She decided she was done. Her voice lowered. Try being a woman in this industry for 50 years. Try aging publicly. While the world tells you to disappear, try turning down roles that reduce you to someone's grandmother or punchline. The studio was silent. No music, no laughter. Just truth. I've taken more risks than most actors ever get the chance to, she said. She stood, smooth, calm. Her chair barely made a sound. I came here expecting a conversation, she added, not a roast. But thank you, Jimmy, for reminding me why I don't do this often anymore. With that, Diane Keaton walked off the stage, shoulders straight, head high, the audience, silent, some stunned, some nodding, and Jimmy Kimmel. He sat frozen behind his desk. No punchline, no recovery. Just the echo of a moment he couldn't control. She repeated slowly, her tone even but laced with fire. Jimmy, I've been taking risks my entire career. The studio fell silent. I took a risk when I chose to age naturally in an industry that demands women stay frozen in time. I took a risk every time I played a complex, flawed woman instead of settling for something likable and safe. I took a risk when I kept working. Long after Hollywood decided women like me should quietly disappear. Jimmy shifted, opening his mouth to respond. Diane held up her hand. The gesture wasn't loud, but it was absolute. But you know what the biggest risk was? She continued. Coming on shows like this and trusting I'd be treated like a person, not a punchline. You could hear the cameras still rolling. No music, no laughs. In the air, Jimmy's smug expression faltered into something more human, but his ego wouldn't let him surrender. Look, Diane, he said, his voice adopting that patronizing softness that always lands like a slap. I think you're being a little sensitive. This is comedy. We poke fun. We laugh. Maybe you've forgotten how not to take yourself so seriously." The room recoiled. Even the band behind him looked away. This was Diane Keaton he was talking to. She repeated, "Jimmy, there's a difference between comedy and cruelty, between teasing and targeting. And there's a massive difference between a joke and what you've been doing for the last 5 minutes." Jimmy tried to laugh it off, but his laugh landed flat. Still, he kept pushing. "Come on, you're really going to sit there and tell me? You can't handle a little ribbing. This is Hollywood, Diane. It's tough. If you can't take the heat." But she cut him off, fire now fully in her voice. "If I can't take the heat," she repeated, leaning in now. "Jimmy, I've been taking heat in this business since before you even knew what a television camera was. I've faced directors who screamed at me, producers who tried to bully me, critics who dismissed me before I spoke a single line." She stood up. "But I've never not once been invited onto a talk show, only to be publicly dressed down by the host for cheap laughs." The band leader stared at his hands. Jimmy's sidekick had vanished into the shadows. This was no longer an interview. This was a reckoning. Jimmy tried a new tactic. Softer now, reaching for charm. "Diane, look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't we start over? Just tell us about your new film." But Diane wasn't letting him rewrite the scene. "No, Jimmy, we're not starting over, because this is the problem. You think you can say anything you want, humiliate whoever you want, and just hit reset when it doesn't go your way. That's not how respect works." Jimmy's mask cracked. His voice rose again, defensive. "With all due respect, Diane, this is my show, my house, my rules. If you don't like it, maybe late-night television just isn't for you anymore." The line hit the room like a slap. The suggestion that Diane Keaton belong in modern entertainment stunned the entire audience. People actually gasped. Diane slowly sat back down, not because she'd surrendered, but because she was about to deliver something final. She looked at Jimmy with something close to pity. "Jimmy, do you know how many talk show hosts I've sat across from in my life? Johnny Carson, David Letterman, Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, Ellen DeGeneres." Her voice was quiet, but every word landed like thunder. Understood their job was to make their guests feel welcome, to create a moment of connection, to respect the people sitting in that chair. Jimmy tried to interrupt, but she raised her voice firm, clear, unshakable. "But you think the job is to be clever at someone else's expense? To prove how quick you are? To score points with your audience? By tearing down someone who came here in good faith?" She stood once more, this time with finality. "If that's your version of entertainment, Jimmy, maybe it's not me who doesn't belong here anymore." No applause, cued. No zinger to save the moment. Just Diane Keaton, graceful, unshaken, leaving a room that no longer deserved her. "You think making your guests uncomfortable is entertainment?" Diane said, her voice low but cutting. "You think diminishing someone else makes you look bigger?" Jimmy shifted in his chair, visibly bristling. "Now wait just a minute," he snapped. "I don't need a lecture on how to do my job. I've been hosting this show for years. I've got millions of viewers. I think I know what I'm doing." Diane tilted her head, calm but unshakable. "Do you?" she asked simply. "Because right now, you have one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood sitting across from you, and instead of engaging in conversation, instead of celebrating decades of work, instead of giving your audience something meaningful, you've spent this entire segment trying to tear me down." The audience held its breath. Jimmy's face was starting to flush, the cracks forming. In his late-night persona, "You know what, Diane?" he fired back, his voice tightening. "Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe you've been in Hollywood so long you think you're untouchable. Your name means you're above criticism." Diane let out a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Criticism," she echoed. "Jimmy, you haven't offered a single actual critique. You've thrown vague jabs, shallow insults, and lazy stereotypes without once engaging with my work. That's not criticism. That's just cruelty dressed up as wit." You could hear a pin drop. What had begun as awkward was now a masterclass in how to dismantle arrogance with grace. Jimmy, desperate now, leaned forward. "Look, I don't know what you want from me here." Diane didn't flinch. "No, you're not," she said. "You're trying to win. You're trying to score points. But this wasn't supposed to be a game. I came here to talk about my film, to share something real, and you turned it into an ego contest no one asked for." Jimmy slammed his hand on the desk, a gesture that was clearly meant to reclaim control. He barked, "If you don't want to play ball, maybe we just end the interview right here." Diane looked at him, then stood, and she smiled. Not a warm smile, not a soft one, the kind of smile that says, "I've already won." "Jimmy," she said, "I've had this exact conversation for 40 years with directors who tried to shout me down, with producers who thought they knew better, with critics who tried to put me in a box." The power had shifted completely. Jimmy, still seated behind his desk, suddenly looked very small. "And you know what I've learned from all those moments?" Diane continued, her voice rising just enough to carry. "The people who try to make others feel small are the ones who already feel that way themselves, the ones who tear people down. They're the most afraid of being seen for who they really are, and the people who confuse cruelty with comedy." She paused. "They understand neither." Jimmy was pale now, his smugness gone, but Diane wasn't finished. "You had the chance tonight to give your audience something real, a glimpse into a career that spanned generations, stories they'd never hear anywhere else. Instead, you wasted it trying to embarrass me." She leaned in slightly, calm as ever. "But here's what you don't get. You can't embarrass someone who knows their worth. You can't belittle someone who's already proven herself. And you definitely can't intimidate someone who's lasted in this business by knowing exactly when to walk away." She turned to leave. Jimmy finally found his voice, but it came. "Out weak Diane, ... Come on, sit down. Let's just talk about your movie." Diane stopped at the edge of the stage and turned to face him one last time. "No, Jimmy, we can't, because now your audience has seen who you really are. When you think you have power over someone, the cameras kept rolling, but the show was already over. They've seen how you treat people," Diane said calmly, unclipping her mic with deliberate grace. "When you think no one's watching, and honestly, I don't think there's any coming back from that." The silence in the room was suffocating. Jimmy looked shaken, now his usual smirk gone, replaced with a flicker of panic. The moment was spiraling, and he knew it. "Look," he stammered, trying to salvage the moment. "If I offended you, I apologize. Maybe I came on a little strong. That's just my style, nothing personal." Diane stopped, turned, and met his eyes. "Jimmy, that's right, there is the problem. You think cruelty is a style, that disrespect is just part of your brand. Cut people down to feel important." They knew the job was to make their guests shine, not to make themselves feel superior. She handed her microphone to a stunned production assistant and smoothed her dress with effortless composure. "You want to know what real comedy looks like?" she said. "Real comedy punches up, not down. Real comedy finds joy in the truth, not pleasure in hurting people. It brings people together. It doesn't isolate or humiliate." Jimmy tried to recover, his voice now edged with desperation. "Diane, please, don't do this. We can fix it." She didn't flinch. "They should be," she replied, "because what just happened here, that wasn't entertainment. That wasn't good television. It wasn't even good business. You forgot the most basic rule of hospitality," she continued, voice steady and clear. "When someone accepts your invitation, you treat them with dignity." She picked up her purse, a simple act, but somehow it carried more weight than anything said all night. She paused, then added quietly, "You know what the tragedy is? I actually came here excited. I came here ready to share stories, to connect with your audience, to talk about a film I care deeply about. After all these years, I still love doing that. I still want to show up. But tonight, you made that impossible." Jimmy tried one final time. "Then stay, please. Let's talk about the film." Diane shook her head slowly. "It's too late, Jimmy, because your audience has already learned everything they need to know about both of us." She walked toward the exit, then turned back one final time. "And Jimmy," she said softly, "they're always watching. Everyone in this audience, everyone at home, everyone who'll see clips of this online, they're watching how you treat people. They're watching whether you lift them up or tear them down. Whether your platform builds something beautiful or something cruel." The camera caught Jimmy's face as her words sank in. It was the exact moment he realized this wasn't going to blow over. This wasn't just a tense interview. This was the one they'd remember him for. Diane looked at him one last time. "I hope you figure out the kind of host you want to be, because right now, And with that, Diane Keaton walked off the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live Not in anger, not in theatrics, but with the quiet strength of someone who knows exactly what they're worth and refuses to settle for less. The studio sat in stunned silence, Jimmy speechless for perhaps the first time in his career. The cameras kept rolling, but the show was over. This wasn't a walk-off. It was a masterclass in self-respect, not a meltdown, a moment of clarity. Diane Keaton didn't lose her cool, she kept her dignity. So, what do you think? Was Diane Keaton right to walk off? Or should she have stayed and finished the interview? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more moments when Hollywood's icons reminded us who they really are and who they refuse to become.